Reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 14, text number 91. Eta shuni dvija jela hana anandita. Misra jagiya ha-ila parama vishmita. Eta shuni dvija jela hana anandita. Misra jagiya ha-ila parama vishmita. Eta shuni. After hearing so much, Dvija, the Brahmana, Jela, returned, Hana, becoming, Anandita, very much pleased, Mishra, Jagannath Mishra, Jagiya, being awakened, Ha-ila, became, Parama, highly, Vishmita, astonished. Translation, being very much pleased, the Brahmana left after talking with Jagannath Mishra. And when Jagannath Mishra awakened from his dream, he was very much astonished. Please repeat. Being very much pleased. The Brahmana left after talking with Jagannath Mishra. But when Jagannath Mishra awakened from his dream, he was very much astonished. No purport, so we'll continue reading, everyone, and we're actually going to finish this chapter because there's just a few more verses. So I'll just read the translations. This is text number 92. He related the dream to his friends and relatives, and every one of them was very much astonished to hear it. Text 93. In this way, Gaura Hari performed his childhood pastimes and day after day increased the pleasure of his parents. Text 94. After some days, Jagannath Mishra inaugurated the primary education of his son by performing the Hati Kadi ceremony. Within a very few days, the Lord learned all the letters and combinations of letters. Purport. The 12 phala, or combinations of letters, are called Repa, Mudhanya, cerebral, Na, Dandavya, dental, Na, Ma, Ya, Ra, La, Va, L, and L, I think. Hati Kadi is the primary educational beginning. At the age of 4 or 5 years, on an auspicious day called Vidyarambha, marking the beginning of primary education, there is a ceremony worshipping Lord Vishnu. And after that, the teacher gives the child a long chalk pencil. After guiding the hand of the student, he instructs him how to write the letters of the alphabet, A, long, I, etc., by writing big letters on the floor. When the child is a little advanced in writing, he is given a slate for his primary education, which ends when he learns the 2-letter combinations, which are called phala, as mentioned above. Text 95. This is a synopsis of the childhood pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, placed herewith in chronological order. Vrindavan Das Thakur has already elaborately explained these pastimes in his book Chaitanya Bhagavat. Text 96. I have therefore made only a brief summary. Being afraid of repetition, I have not elaborated upon this subject matter. Text 97. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita Adi-lila 14th chapter, describing Lord Caitanya's childhood pastimes. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhaite grim yat kripa tamaham vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls. By his grace, even a lame man can cross over mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. So I did find one extra little bit of one of these pastimes in Vrindavan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat. Just one page, and I'll just read that first, and then we'll attempt to speak. All glories to the Supreme Personality, Sri Vishvambara, Lord Chaitanya. He is the Supreme Lord of Lords, and his feet are decorated by the marks of a flag, lightning, goad, etc. The Supreme Lord performed various transcendental pastimes while residing in Jagannath Mishra's house. One day, Sri Jagannath Mishra called his dear son Vishvambara and told him, "Bring my book." Nimai hastened to the house when he heard his father's call, and the ankle bells on his feet jingled loudly as he moved. Sri Jagannath Mishra inquired, "Where is the tinkling of ankle bells coming from?" Both he and his wife, Srimati Sachi Devi, searched all around. "My son does not wear ankle bells on his feet. Where does this sweet sound of ankle bells come from?" How extraordinary. The father and mother considered the incident but remained speechless with surprise. After bringing the book, the Lord ran off to play. The parents saw another wonder when they entered their house. All over the house they saw wonderful footprints with different symbols like the flag, lightning, goad, festoons, etc. Both were thrilled with great delight, and their eyes brimmed with tears as they examined the footprints. They offered obeisances to the lotus footprints and said, "We will be liberated, no more births." Sri Jagannath Mishra requested his wife, "Please listen, mother of Vishvambara, Lord Chaitanya's elder brother, cook a nice sweet rice preparation with ghee. In the morning I shall bathe our house deity, Sri Damodar Shila, with Pancha Gavya, the 5 substances, cow milk, yogurt, ghee, cow urine, and cow dung. I believe that the sound of ankle bells actually came from the feet of the deity as he secretly moved around the house." Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata felt great happiness as they worshipped the Shalagram Shila, and Lord Chaitanya smiled within his mind. Jai Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. So, we're finishing one chapter, the Lord's childhood pastimes. And the next chapter describes Mahaprabhu's youth, Adi-lila. 3 ages are there, sometimes described as Kumara or Bala, babyhood. Then the Lord's early childhood, and then the Lord's youth. And of course, we also, as human beings, appear to pass through these different ages, but there's one great difference between the Supreme Lord and his parts and parcels, the jivas, is that Krishna never passes beyond, never appears older than a 16-year-old youth. Nava Yovanamcha, eternally youthful and supremely attractive. Whereas we grow old, we get disease, and we pass away. So there is that difference between the Supreme Lord and ordinary mortal human beings. So wonderful pastimes, and just to recap a little bit, many of the Lord's pastimes described in this chapter, extraordinary, supramundane, such as the Lord's being apparently stolen away by two thieves who planned to rob him of his exquisite jewelry and gold and silver ornaments. But those two thieves were covered by the Lord's Yogamaya potency, and their nefarious ambitions were thwarted, and they just went in a big circle and brought baby Nimai back to his house, much to the relief of his parents, who were searching along with the other elders everywhere for him. Similarly, the Lord, seeing one of his eternal consorts for the first time, Srimati Lakshmi Priya Devi, and the mutual attraction which was sparked by the divine couple seeing one another on the bank of the Ganga, even as children. You may be knowing that the English word lucky comes from the Sanskrit Lakshmi, through the Bengali, where it's also pronounced lucky, Lakshmi Priya, Mahaprabhu's first wife, Lakshmi Priya. So, and of course, everyone is anxious to receive the blessings of the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi. So often the expression is, oh, so-and-so is very lucky. They have a lot of money. So they've obviously been blessed by Srimati Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune. So, so many other wonderful pastimes are there in this chapter, Lord's childhood pastimes. And of course, Krishna is extremely attractive in all his different ages, but the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in particular, very fond of Mahaprabhu's Navadvip pastimes. And then, of course, the Lord moved his residence to Jagannath Puri and travelled, and so many other pastimes are there. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami just gives a brief synopsis of these pastimes, because as he says again and again, Vrindavan Das Thakur has already very extensively elaborated on these early pastimes. So he will just give a brief description. While doing research for this class yesterday, I came across something I'd never heard before, which is very interesting. Speaking of Vrindavan Das Thakur and Caitanya Bhagavat, he is, of course, known as the Vyas of Adi-lila. And it is described there how on one occasion, Narad Muni, during the time of Lord Caitanya, went to one of the Vaikuntha planets to see Lord Narayan. Narad is, after all, principally a Vaikuntha devotee. When he got to this particular Vaikuntha planet, no one was there. He was looking everywhere for Lord Narayan, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, all the Vaikuntha Vasis, no one was there. And then he came across an old man. He still had 4 arms and was very attractive, but he was an old man. So Narad said, "Where is everybody? The place is deserted." And the old man said, "They've all gone to Navadvip." So I'll leave that one with you to meditate on. Devotees don't like to miss out on Krishna's pastimes in whatever form. So Krishna does admit to Arjuna in the Gita that very few persons are interested in spiritual life. Manushanam sahasreshu kastid yatati siddhaye. Out of many thousands, one may endeavour for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. And similarly, after many births and deaths, one who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. So devotees are very few and far between. And actually the overwhelming bulk of Vedic literatures, and I've heard almost 90% of all Vedic literatures, they are encouraging living entities, human beings, in karma kanda, or fruitive activities, but to do it in a pious way. Follow rules and regulations, that's all they have to do, with the objective of enjoying life here and now, but also promoting oneself to higher planetary systems, heavenly planets, Swagaloka and others, to enjoy in the future an even more opulent life. So very little is there about transcendence, but there is some in the form of the Upanishads, which are described like the condensed essence of the four Vedas. And they are the literatures of the Jnanis, the Jnani yogis especially, who have become somewhat disillusioned with mundane material enjoyment and are aspiring for some spiritual life. So those literatures are there. They comprise a small portion of the great bulk of Vedic writings. Upanishads are then described as being condensed even further down to what is known as the Vedanta Sutra. And two very famous aphorisms at the beginning of Vedanta Sutra, which Srila Prabhupada quotes often, Janmad yasya yataha anataha, that now you have achieved a rare human form of life, now is the opportune time to inquire into the nature of the absolute truth. And Atato Brahma Jignasa. What is that absolute truth? The absolute truth is He from whom everything has emanated. So, and then Srimad Bhagavatam is described as the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Srila Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam Amalam Puranam Vaishnavanam Priyam. It's the spotless Purana, and it's very dear to the devotees of the Lord. So at different times, different personalities come. Either the Supreme Lord, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, and their most intimate associates. And at other times, Krishna sends his empowered representatives. And in the course of the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there have been two great philosopher acharyas, Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Baladeva Vijayabhusana. And not that all the other great Vaishnava acharyas in the Gaudiya line weren't also great philosophers and scholars. They were, most definitely, and profuse authors. But there were very specific times in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism where there was a special need. So Krishna empowered these two great personalities, Jiva and Baladeva Vijayabhusana. Because at those times, as the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya was becoming established, there were many Jnanis. There's still many Jnanis in India and all over the the world, there are many people who are a little philosophically inclined. It's said sometimes if you go to New York City and hop in a cab, every New York veteran city cab driver is a great philosopher, because he's no doubt had many, many people in his taxi cab who have shared their life stories with him, and many successful people. And they're just sitting in their taxi cab all day. So when they get a fare, a passenger, they get to talk to somebody. So similarly, there are always people who are philosophically inclined. Prabhupada gave his wonderful definition, if we can remember it. Religion without philosophy is sentimentality or fanaticism, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So both have to be there. So Srila Jiva and Srila Baladev, they appeared at times in India where there were many spiritual aspirants, but Mahaprabhu's mission was still just taking shape, you could say. And those personalities, so people, just as we also get many spiritual seekers here visiting us at New Govardhana and in all our temples all over the world, so that just as there has been since time immemorial, people are looking. The search for happiness is eternal. From the lowest life forms, even the single cell amoeba is trying to surround some protoplasm, organic matter, and devour it. That's its aim in life, and it hopes to get happiness and survive from doing that. What to speak of higher life forms? Ananda Maya Biya Sat. So Krishna is pleasure-seeking, and his parts and parcels, you and I, and all living entities, we're also pleasure-seeking. But the Upanishads describe that there are different types of happiness, beginning with Anamaya. Anamaya means the happiness that a baby, an infant, a newborn feels when it's suckling its mother's breast milk. That's its goal in life. And if it's able to achieve that, it's very happy. But then after a short time, a child realizes, I've got a mind. I can accept and reject sankalpa and vikalpa. That's the business of the mind. And of course, as every parent and grandparent knows, at a certain point, around the age of 2 or more, a child learns the magic word no. And so that's rejection. Or yes, when it's something highly desirable. So that's mana maya. And along with that, we learn that we actually have consciousness, jnanamaya. We start to, of course, learn more and more about the world that we live in and so on. And then ultimately there is what's known as Anandamaya. Anandamaya Biya Sat. Everyone is looking for Ananda, or that happiness state. So of course that comes when one realizes that one's not the body, one's spirit soul, and along with being a spirit soul, there is a supreme spiritual entity, the Supreme Lord, and we have a relationship with him which we just need to revive, to cultivate. Just like fire is dormant within wood, and when the conditions are right, that wood bursts into flames. So similarly, and it's described beautifully by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Caitanya Caritamrita, how there are different stages in bhakti, and he gives beautiful Bengali words to describe them, but he likens it to, I could probably find them here, let's see, how do you go? Should have put a tag yesterday when we were revising. Oh, here we are. There's the page. The first is called Dhumayita. Bengali devotees, please forgive my faulty pronunciation. That means smoking. The next one is Jwalita, lighted. Then Dipta, blazing. Then Udipta, inflamed. And then Sudipta, intensely inflamed. So we know on the path of bhakti there are different stages which hopefully we're steadily progressing through, beginning with just coming to the realization that we're not the body, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and I have a relationship with him. And this is beautifully described by Srila Rupa Goswami, chapter 1 of Nectar of Devotion. And this chapter is entitled The Characteristics of Pure Devotion. And it's worth noting again and again that Rupa Goswami sets the bar very high. Pure devotional service in his famous Anyabilasita Sunyam Jnana Kama Janavritam Anukulyana Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttamam. Uttama means topmost bhakti. And that is, of course, devotion to Krishna, which is free of any of the anarthas or unwanted aspirations for liberation or sense enjoyment or mystic powers specifically. So the first of the 6 characteristics of pure devotion is it brings immediate relief from all sorts of distress. The first 2 are really profound. One is negative and the other is positive, but they're actually both really positive, such as freedom from all different types of distress. And many of us may, if we can remember back to when we first joined temples of Srila Prabhupada, moved into the ashram, and immediately there was complete freedom from all distress. And some of us may have been extremely distressed previously, but we took a leap of faith, you could say, moved into an ashram and just left everything else behind, much to the astonishment of friends and family, and just took up the process of pure devotional service. Did whatever we were asked to do. And immediately we experienced this complete freedom from all distress. So that's the first one. And the second one, it brings about all auspiciousness in the life of the devotee, beginning of all auspiciousness. So, and that manifests, of course, in the bliss that the devotee experiences even very early on in one's devotional journey. We start to hear profound philosophy. We start to relish the chanting of Krishna's names. We do service which links us to Krishna. We get the association of saintly devotees. It's very exciting. Everything's new. It's a great adventure. And hopefully we can maintain that enthusiasm throughout the course of our whole lifetime. So they're the first 2. I'll read the others as well. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. 4th is pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Number 5, those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. And number 6 is pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. So it's interesting, Srila Bilva Mangala Thakur in his wonderful Sri Krishna Caritamrita describes that since rendering devotional service, he has experienced that even Mukti Devi herself is standing at his doorway with folded palms wanting to serve him. And not only Srimati Mukti Devi, the personification of liberation, but she is there with other goddesses, such as the goddesses which bless us with the other great opulences which everyone is greedy for and anxious for. Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta and Sri. Good birth in a respectable family. Janma, Aishvarya, a lot of wealth. Shruta, to become highly educated, and bodily beauty, Sri. So he describes that just like a queen going about, she's followed by her maidservants. So these are the different maidservants. Liberation is not even desired by Krishna's devotees. It's considered, in one sense, a material desire. That Krishna's devotees, pure devotees, wherever you send me, Krishna, wherever I go, whether I'm here, heaven or hell, wherever, I can always remember you. I can always gather some fruits and flowers and offer them to you. I can always chant your holy names and remember you. So devotee is not attached to being liberated, but it comes as a byproduct of devotion. So we have some other interesting points here which we may try and recall. Oh, and what is also interesting about those 6 characteristics of pure devotional service is that we experience 2 of them in sadhana, and that's the first 2 that we mentioned. Cessation of all distress and the beginning of all auspiciousness. So they manifest even in our sadhana, our beginning practices of bhakti. The second 2, they manifest in the stage of bhava, and the last 2 manifest in the stage of prema. But within prema, all 6 are there. So that's encouraging. But the first 2, even in the beginning stages of sadhana, are there. So I also came across recently a wonderful recollection from one disciple of one of our revered senior godbrothers. He was on a morning walk once when another devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, how did you become so advanced? And Prabhupada replied, by always being introspective. And when I first heard that, I thought, that's really wonderful. It's really courageous on the part of our Venerable Godbrother to ask such a question in the first instance. But obviously very sincere and serious, and example is better than precept, though precept is also very important. But for a disciple to have such an elevated, advanced spiritual master, naturally a disciple will want to know, will be curious, well, how did my Guru Maharaj become such an advanced devotee of Krishna? So our godbrother was brave enough to ask this question. And Prabhupada answered the way he did, by always being introspective. And introspection is very important in spiritual life. Of course, we have the 2 opposites. So-and-so is a real introvert, or such and so is a real extrovert. We have different personalities. That's what makes living in the material world very interesting. We're not all the same. So we have persons who are very extroverted. They're very sociable and very charismatic, and many people are attracted to them, and they like being with other people. And then we have others who prefer to be by themselves, perhaps you could say, a little introverted. But for those on the spiritual path, it's described again by the Upanishads that the spiritual path is very narrow, like a razor's edge. So if you're on a very narrow path, you have to be careful. And of course, every tradesman knows that you have to keep your tools very sharp blunt tools are more dangerous than, much more dangerous than very sharp tools. Anyone who's tried to hammer a chisel into hard wood and the chisel wasn't very sharp knows it's potentially very dangerous. So sharpness in spiritual life means keeping our intellect always being reflective. And this is another strong statement by Sri Krishna, that those who are on the spiritual path they're always conscious of the miseries of birth, death, old age and disease. They don't forget those things. They're always introspective. I found that a really profound statement by Srila Prabhupada, by always being introspective. So, and of course that's the Brahminical life. The Brahminical life means one is naturally, just by nature, more interested in spiritual topics, spiritual practices. It's not an artificial imposition on the mind. One is just naturally inclined that way. That's Brahminical persons. They relish that lifestyle, whereas others are not so much inclined in that way. In fact, most people aren't very much inclined in that way. So, and these 6 occupational duties of Brahminical persons have been given very nicely by Swayambhuva Manu, one of the direct sons of Lord Brahma at the very dawn of creation. He authored his Manu Samhita, also known as Manu Smriti, and he gives there that the occupational duties of Brahminical persons, not only Brahmins but also Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. He describes what their occupational duties are. But for Brahminical persons, they naturally like to study Shastras and also teach those Shastras. They perform yagyas or sacrifices, and they teach others how to perform yagyas or sacrifices. They're entitled to accept charity, and they also, if they get too much, they don't hoard it, but they give it away, as they very magnanimously give whatever excess away. And we see in Srila Prabhupada's society that he set up that this is the main business of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are doing all these activities, all these 6 functions are going on. So that's a Brahminical society, and a wonderful example. I always, whenever he visits us here, is Caitanya Charan Prabhu, who's highly, very well educated in his former life, but then took to the devotional path and dovetailed his wonderful education background and teaching background in now travelling the world and enlightening so many other people. And of course there are thousands of other devotees doing exactly the same and very well qualified to do that, and that is very pleasing. And of course those 6 activities, patan, patana, yajana, dana, pratigraha, there is very much a need for those 6. There must always be a head of society, giving intelligence, giving guidance. In ancient times, Brahmins and Kshatriyas worked very harmoniously together for the benefit of all the other members of society. The Brahmanas would do it through their speaking. They were very influential by speaking Vedic wisdom, educating others. And Kshatriyas, kings, they had treasuries. They could support large communities of Brahmins who didn't have to work but would spend their days in these other 6 activities, creating auspiciousness. And they also had armies to protect the citizens. And Brahminical persons are predominantly in the mode of goodness, sattva guna. Kshatriyas are a mixture of goodness and passion. Vaishyas, or the mercantile class, predominantly passion, even with a little bit of ignorance. And the Shudras, the workers, predominantly ignorance, tamagun. But everyone can offer something in sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. That is the beauty of the Varnashram or Vedic civilization. So, Hare Krishna. Another nice verse we came across, which is actually mentioned in this chapter and is quite often quoted, and Prabhupada gives a nice explanation, is the verse where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that things which are very difficult to achieve become very easy to accomplish if one has the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. But if one doesn't have the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, even relatively easy things become very difficult to achieve. And Prabhupada cites the example of materialistic, atheistic scientists not being able to grasp the concept that life comes from life, not from matter. So I might stop there, everyone. I'll leave a little time for questions or comments. Otherwise, we can proceed. I don't know if we have Bhakta Mike this morning. Yes, we have Bhakta Mike. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking, Prabhupada blames the Brahmins in India because they stopped teaching. Like, it's interesting, isn't it? The central duty of the Brahmin is to teach, which means he's going to teach Brahminical qualities to other people, make them into Brahmins. But because they stopped, then he said that's why India, it led to separation. That because everybody was being held down. Only I can be a Brahmin, I'm at the top, I'm there by birth, no one else can become. And because of that, then Muslim people were able to preach and say, well, yeah, every other process is different. You can come with us. So in India ended up splitting because the Brahmins stopped teaching.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Ram. I think everyone heard that, and yeah, it's broadcast loud and clear. So yeah, very good point. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, and some of us who are accustomed to listening to Srila Prabhupada's lectures and room conversations, we know that Prabhupada, on a number of occasions, in India especially, Brahmins would sometimes come to Prabhupada who were not favourable and who wanted to challenge him. Why you are initiating these malechas in the Western countries, giving them Brahminical initiation. And sometimes there would be quite vociferous debates, arguments, even voices raised. Prabhupada would generally, to protect his Western disciples, he would argue with these Brahmins in Hindi. Generally it was in South India. Not all were like that, but they definitely felt threatened, challenged, if you like. And of course there are many statements in the literatures, Kalo Sudra Sambhava, that everybody is born lower than a Sudra in the age of Kali. And there are actually other statements even heavier which say that in the Kali Yuga, demons are actually born in Brahmin families. So Prabhupada really shook up the Brahminical class in India, and he would throw it straight back to them and saying, well, you're not doing it. I am just one man. I am doing it. And of course, there was one where one man came, a Brahmana came to Prabhupada and challenged him and said, how you can be initiating these Westerners, they're so sinful. And Prabhupada said, what is greater, a mountain of sin or the holy name of Krishna? And the man just sat there, dumbfounded. And Prabhupada pushed him, said, so? But because this man had some knowledge, he was defeated and he accepted defeat. So Prabhupada knew all the arguments and all the Shastric verses very well. He'd heard them so many times from his own Guru Maharaj, who also, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, shook up the Brahminical caste system in India in a monumental way, had many enemies. So much so that his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, said he should actually leave Jagannath Puri because he was criticising his son was criticising the Brahmins so vociferously. So he didn't care, he was fearless. So yes, it's a very good point, Ram. Yes, this is what Brahminical persons are meant to do. They're meant to study, become very knowledgeable. Prabhupada always gave the example that just like lawyers in a court of law, either for the defence or the prosecution, they go hard at one another to try and prove the case based on previous court judgments and the law, and of course evidence that's submitted. And then you have a judge and perhaps a jury as well, and they have to decide. But Prabhupada said he wanted his followers to become so well versed in Vedic wisdom so we can prove conclusively, defeat arguments from opponents to theism and so on, and establish Sri Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. So that is of course the first two, Patan and Partana, and then we perform the sacrifice in Kali Yuga. It's chanting Hare Krishna, both Kirtan and our japa. And if someone comes along, shows a little interest, then we give them a strand of japa beads and we say, you try chanting 1 round a day, or maybe 4, and build up and participate in Kirtan. So that's the Yajna for the age, and of course we have our other, on important occasions we do perform other Agnihotra fire yajnas, auspicious occasions, initiations and weddings and so on. And then charity is given to the Krishna consciousness movement, so we also accept that charity. And then we also distribute prasadam profusely. We have our big festivals, sumptuous prasadam is distributed. And we give people transcendental literature and so on. Whole big festivals, go to a great deal of effort to hold big Rath Yatra festivals in major cities all over the world. So these activities are going on. Very nice point, thank you. Mataji, did you have the mic? Did you want to ask something? Make a comment?
Yes, I thought about the verse that you quoted from Nectar of Devotion, and you were saying the symptoms of pure devotional service. So one was that you become freed from material distress, but then later on you're saying that the devotee doesn't desire liberation. So I was thinking, does that mean that although we're not desiring liberation, we're indication that we are performing devotional services that we free from distress, which isn't liberation, isn't it? That we're having this freedom from distress. So I was wondering, so when we are not feeling liberated, is that an indication that we're not performing devotional service? And can we assume that we're actually performing pure devotional service? So what do we do when we, we're aware that we're not performing devotional service because we're feeling bound?
if I understand you correctly, we don't have to worry about liberation in the sense that we're already liberated. It's just part and parcel. It's just a matter of time. And that famous verse is there in the Bhagavatam, that it's our rightful claim. There may be some time separating, just like a child knows that eventually it will inherit the property of its parents. But we go on tolerating. I just can't think of the verse. If anyone can think of the first word, I'm away. Famous verse from the Bhagavatam. Sorry? Tate nukampam sushamikshamana bunjana evat kripam vipakam. Yes, I think that's it. Yeah. So one goes on tolerating whatever reverses, understanding that Krishna is minimizing one's suffering in this world to a bare minimum. For all our past misdeeds, prarabdha karma, Krishna's just giving us a token. So we may not be feeling very liberated sometimes, we may not be feeling very Krishna conscious, but we go on rendering our service to Krishna, and we're going to have good days and bad days. We're going to have ecstatic times, and we're going to have times where it's just henny penny, the sky's falling, the whole, this one has just abused me. I read another interesting thing, just to share as we do. Prabhupada said once, if you realize you've got a problem with anger, practice forgiveness. Because we're going to meet also, sometimes a devotee is going to just dump a whole lot of negativity stuff, tell us we're this and that and the other thing. Whoa. And our false egos could arc up and we could get angry. Well, none of those things. But if we practice forgiveness, all right, we may never forget, but at least we forgive. So that's our sojourn in the material world. And again, as Prabhupada famously said, a person's greatness can be gauged by how well he or she can tolerate provoking situations. So I might be drifting a little bit away from liberation, but I hope it's somewhat useful. But I did also read yesterday something really interesting about liberation. And where that's gone momentarily. But yes, sorry, it's gone. It was really interesting. Hope that's helpful. All right, Jai. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki Jai.